Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 11:15 session, Scaffolding for Success. I'm supporting English learners in the classroom. We have Dr. Crystal Whipkey here as our presenter. Thank you so much, Dr. Whipkey, for being with us this morning. My name is Christina Lavania, and I'm an associate professor in the College of Education and Human Development and part of the leadership team for the projects that are supporting our work today. I want to thank you all for joining this session and being with us this morning. We're so happy to be here together. I will be monitoring the chat. So in a few minutes, in a few seconds, I'll turn my camera off and let Crystal take over. If you have a question that is specific only to you, you can send me a direct message. If you have a question that's for the whole group, you can drop it in the chat. And then when we get towards the end and we have some time for Q&A, I'll make sure to amplify anything in the chat that I think Crystal might need to speak to directly. I will ask that if we have any kind of problem where Crystal's video starts to lag, then if you have your video on, please turn it off. I see most everybody has their video off right now, so that shouldn't be a problem. But thank you, everyone, for being here, especially Crystal. And I'm going to be quiet now and let her take over.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to do this. I will tell you, it makes me a little nervous to be doing this virtually. So please let me know if thank you, Dr. Lavania, for helping, because I can't see the chat when I'm screen sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, okay. Now, Dr. Lavania, it is not progressing.
Are you able to click on the slide itself, Crystal?
There
you
we
go.
go. Okay, so just to introduce myself, I am currently a kindergarten through second grade ESL teacher, and I am in my 33rd year of teaching. The first 16 was with special education students with the most significant delays, and the last 17 have been with English as a second language. I got my BA in special ed from BG, my master's in TESOL from the University of Findlay, and then just this past August, I got my doctorate from leadership studies from BGSU. I am also a member of the Ohio Education Association, EL Cadre. And the reason I bring that up, because we are a group of teachers from around Ohio, but we advocate not only for English learners, but also for their teachers. So we try to be resources to other districts who are just maybe starting an EL program. Okay. And I would love for you to put in the chat who you are. If you are a student or a teacher or administrator, what kind of experience do you have? Do you have currently any English learners in your classroom? Or have you had any training or classes related to English learners? If you can go ahead and put that in there. And I'm going to continue. Today, I'm just going to give you a brief background of who English learners are, the legal obligations that schools have to meet their needs, stages of second language acquisition, and two types of English. Then we're going to look at the process of identifying English learners, how their language levels can help guide your instruction, different types of scaffolds, and how to make content accessible. Have a lot to give to you, and the scaffolds are going to be a little bit more towards the end. But when you see links on the slide, just know I'm not going to have time to open them up, but at the very end, I'm going to provide a document full of links of every link that is in this presentation, as well as other important information. Okay, so who are English learners? It's just anybody who speaks a different language in their home, but they might have a limitation in understanding, speaking, reading, or writing, and the limitations might inhibit their participation in school. Okay, if you look at, just real quickly, look at the word cloud, and there are a lot of acronyms that get floated around. We used to call them LEP, which is limited English proficient, which is a very deficit view of these students. So now we call them English learners, English language learners, but some people still think that's deficit. So some people are pushing to be called multilingual. So whatever terms we use, I'll probably be using ELs. There's also programming like English as a second language or English as a new language. I do want to point out the SLIFE. SLIFE are students with limited or interrupted formal education. And we are seeing more and more of those students for whatever reason they've missed school. They could be migrants, they could be leaving a dangerous civil unrest in their country. So we're seeing a lot of those students come to us, which means we have a lot of different needs. But I also want to point out that English learners are not all immigrants. Most of them actually are born here in the United States. Okay. In Ohio, we just had our Ohio TESOL conference in November, and David shared that we have more than 60,000 English learners. Most of them, about 40%, speak Spanish, but there are more than 90 languages represented. And in 2022, 15,000 of those English learners were new to the United States or to school. So they were either kindergarten or brand new move-ins or immigrants to the US. In my district, which is Findlay City Schools, our Yale population has doubled in the last 10 years, and we currently have 190. 70 of those are in my school alone, K through 2 building. Our languages are, let's see, Japanese, Spanish, Haitian Creole, Chinese, Telugu. We usually average between 17 and 20 different languages. But the needs of our students are changing, as are the reasons that they're coming here. So we're seeing a lot of newer immigrants and people who are escaping different things in their country. Okay. All right. So in addition, just real quick, I want to touch upon this. In addition to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there are several laws and court cases set in place to ensure that we are meeting their needs. And this comes from the Dear Colleague letter, which was written just as a reminder to schools about the civil rights requirements. So all of these are important, but the ones that we're going to touch upon in the presentation are in bold. And the first thing that we have to do is identify and assess all potential ELs, okay? And I'm going to touch upon how we do that. Then once they're identified, we are required to provide a language assistance for those children or students. We have to staff and support. And it needs to be by a TESOL endorsed teacher, not an aide. Even if it's a bilingual aide, that is an extra bonus, but it still needs to be a teacher, not a volunteer, not a tutor, not the title teacher. It needs to be someone who is endorsed and trained. And then we need to provide meaningful access to those students for to our curricular programs. And then down at the end on the other side, we need to ensure meaningful communication with parents, which means it needs to be in their language. So at conferences, we need to provide an interpreter. If we are sending information home, it needs to be in their language that they can understand, because that is their civil right. Okay. Okay, just real quick, I'm not going to read through all of these, of course, but as the students bring diverse levels of backgrounds in language literacy and schooling backgrounds, they also are going to bring a lot of challenges. And as you see, the challenges are going to overlap. One of the main challenges for teachers, I believe, is just making content accessible to students who come with multiple languages, multiple schooling backgrounds, multiple proficiencies. That's really tough because for the most part, teachers, gen ed teachers, classroom teachers have not had training specifically for ELs. So that becomes a difficult thing for them. For the students, of course, it's just difficult to sit around and you're hearing English around you all day long and not understanding it, but also idioms and body language and gestures and the academic language. If there's no background or connection, that's really difficult. Being able to ask for help or communicate your basic needs is hard. Families, depending on why they're here, there may be a trust or a fear issue, but also just understanding school culture and expectations, because the school's culture could be different in different countries. I know our families have struggled with these bottom bullets of how to fill out forms, especially, but even class parties and fundraisers, they think if we send something home that they have to participate in, just not understanding everything that goes on. Okay. All right, uh-oh, I skipped something here, guys. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so I wanted to bring this to your attention because this link right here, you're going to get this at the end. But there are six stages of second language acquisition, okay? And it's really important to know that students progress through these stages, because I think a lot of teachers might get frustrated after, 3 months. They come to me and they say, well, they're not doing anything, they're just sitting there. Well, if you know that the pre-production is also the silent period, you know that is a normal progression, okay? So I just need my teachers to be aware of these stages, because it helps us to adjust our expectations and adjust our instruction. Additionally, at this link, it's going to explain every single stage, but it also gives you instructional strategies for each stage of that. So that's a nice little tool for you guys. Another thing about acquisition, there are two different types. One is the BICS, that's your social language. It's what they learn first because it's easy, it's meaningful. The high school kids, they might be talking about cars or makeup or movies or music. The little ones might be talking about video games or Pokemon cards. So it's meaningful to them and it's context embedded to them. And it's really not demanding cognitively. So that only takes 6 to 2 years, 6 months to 2 years to develop. The CALP is your cognitive language, which is your classroom and content, and it's super specialized. And that takes about 5 to 7 years to develop. Okay. And again, I have teachers coming to me and saying, well, I hear her talking in English with her friends, but she's not doing any work. Again, we need to understand these two types of language and these second language acquisition steps, just so we can be aware of how we are working with our students. And these come from the site of Coloring Colorado, which is a very good, excellent resource for all things ELL. Okay. All right, so we have to identify English learners through ESSA. Schools are required to establish a statewide procedure, and that's going to be upon enrollment. There is a language usage survey that parents need to fill out, and they answer questions such as, what was your child's first language? What do you use most at home with your child? And if there's any other language listed on that survey, then we are required by law to give them the screener. And in Ohio, it's the Ohio English Language Proficiency Screener. It does reading, writing, listening, and speaking, are 4 domains. And if they score in the emerging or the progressing areas, then we are required to provide language instruction for them, okay? So I want to point out, when I screen, I get a score in each domain. And here's just an example of your listening and reading domains, and this is kindergarten. At this link, which you will receive, you're going to get, it goes through K through 12 in all 4 domains. So if I tell you a student is a level 3 in listening, these are some of the things that you know that they should be able to do. But if they are a level 1 in reading, these are some of the things that they should be able to do. So again, it's good to be aware of what their levels are so we can adjust our expectations and know how we are eventually going to help scaffold and help them meet the academic needs. Okay. Okay. I just want to put this in here because one of the first things that my teachers ask me, they want strategies. They want to go straight to the strategies. But first, you really have to get to know who your students are. You need to know those levels. And then you need to know some additional things like, can your student read or write in their first language? That is super important to know. What is the literacy level? You may need to know some cultural things, with holidays or religious restrictions. Which of your students might celebrate Ramadan and be fasting? So because that's going to affect how late they stay up at night, or how they can't drink water during the day. So there's a lot of things that we need to know. And did they go to school? Did they miss school? So get to know as much as you can about the student background and their interests. And then when we're thinking about lessons, we want to identify, what are the demands of the lessons? What are the possible barriers for those students based on those language levels? And then how can I overcome those barriers? Okay. Then I can think about strategies, which is going to take us to the next step of just doing language objectives. Okay. So language objectives, think about your lesson, the presentation, and the task, and identify where that language lives. What am I asking students to do? Okay. Language objectives are going to support their development and also just let them know what skills are needed. Okay. And you can look over getting started, the things to consider, the vocabulary, the content. What am I asking them to do? Do I want them to explain or read or write? Okay. And then what are some strategies that I can offer them to help get through that? So if I want students, these are just very simplified strategies, but if I want a student to define and use math vocabulary, but they're at a level one, I might have some scaffolds, or I might have some just pictures to match the words to the pictures, or for writing describing words I might have a word bank with some visuals. Okay, so and again, this link is going to go in deeper and give you some ideas of how to write language objectives. So this brings you to the scaffolds, which are the how do I help those kids meet those goals, or meet, be able to define and be able to orally explain. So a scaffold is a temporary framework put in place for support. Okay. So if you look at this construction example, the scaffolds are put there to help the workers reach heights that they cannot reach on their own. And that's what we want to do with the scaffolds for the students. Okay, they are the benefits of scaffolds. Students are going to experience a supportive learning environment. It reduces frustration, increases understanding by gradually building upon what they already know. And it can also be motivating. Okay, so a scaffold also needs to be intentional and strategic. It's more than just differentiating for your whole class. Okay, you have to have strategic strategies based on what we know about their levels and what the needs are. Okay, it can be grouped different ways, like verbal and visual. And I'm going to give you some more strategy examples shortly here. It can also be procedural, but it comes down to instructional practices, instructional materials, and instructional groupings. And I do want to discuss, before I move on, just about the instructional groupings, how important pair work is for these students. Because if I pair a student up who is very limited speaking English, if I pair them up with a student, they're going to hear the student participate in discussion. So they're hearing correct vocabulary, they're hearing things related to the content, but they're also having the opportunity to try to copy that and repeat it. Okay, so it's so important to make sure these students are having opportunity to practice English. For my study, I went and observed 8 different teachers. And out of those 8, there was only one classroom where the students were actually speaking and were actually practicing English. And so I think we just need to be more intentional about giving them more opportunities. Okay. Okay, so some verbal scaffolds. A lot of these, if you are a classroom teacher, you already do. Repeat and rephrase. So repeat and rephrase, you just want to I'm going to go back real quick. The reason we use verbal scaffolds, we want to reinforce pronunciation and meaning, and also it helps students acquire vocabulary and also the language structures. Okay, so when I repeat and rephrase, I'm going to repeat something I might say. Okay, if I'm teaching poetry, I said, we know a stanza is a group of lines. How many stanzas do you see? Let's count the stanzas as I'm pointing to them on the board. So I'm repeating stanzas several times. I'm giving a definition. Okay. Another way would be to rephrase, what are some similarities between these two animals? How are they the same? So I'm connecting the word similarities and defining it by it means the same. Okay. Maybe if you want to recast something, you are repeating a student's phrase back with maybe a restated or a corrected version. If a student says, the girl was brave for speaking in front of everybody, and I could repeat, yes, the girl was brave because she spoke on a stage. She did a difficult thing. Okay, so we know that when you do something that's difficult for you, that could be brave. So you're just constantly giving definitions, and restating things for the student. Please be careful of how quickly you speak. I know I speak too fast, but we have to slow your speech and make sure you enunciate. Be aware that a lot of our students, their languages have very different consonant and vowel sounds, and we don't share a lot of the same sounds. So make sure you are enunciating. Be aware of your words. Watch your idioms. Please be consistent when you have classroom rules or routines. There are so many ways to say one thing, but be consistent so the student can connect those words with that routine. Okay. And then you want to simplify your questions. Just keep in the essential content, the essential words. That way you can reduce the linguistic load. Okay. And over here for model the think aloud, that's just you stating out loud how you're going to solve something. If you're working on a math problem, you're gonna say, gosh, this is really hard, but I know that she has 5 apples and she has 3. You're speaking something out loud. If I'm reading and if I come to a word I don't know, I can say, wow, this is a picture of a certain animal, but that word doesn't start with that letter. So you're speaking aloud your thought process. How are you going to solve something? I noticed this, so maybe I can predict this. Model the think aloud. Okay. And then you have read alouds. That allows the teacher to model the correct pronunciation, but also the prosody, which is which syllables are accented in. And so you've got your rhythm and your intonation. It also helps you to introduce and explain vocabulary with visuals, and then it allows the students to interact with the book. So those are just some simple verbal strategies. Visuals are one of the most important things you can do for an English learner, okay? It makes your abstract concrete, clarifies meaning, and promotes understanding, okay? It's a must-have. If I can get my teachers to do anything, it's always use visuals. Just talking is not enough, okay? We want to use it when we introduce or reinforce vocabulary, when we're teaching a new content or giving background information. They help students understand key concepts and connect to their background knowledge. Use them whenever you can. You use them in your wall displays, in your rules, in your teaching of new vocab. Use them in your slides and PowerPoint. In this example of a worksheet, what good is it to hand out a worksheet if they're not reading in English yet? So make sure that you add that picture. Adding the visual at least gives them knowledge of what the topic might be, or it allows students to make connections, okay? Some other visual supports are going to be a graphic organizer. If you do use a graphic organizer, you must model it. You can't just expect students to know how to do something. Make sure you model how to fill it out. Do it together, do it in small groups. Anything that you want the student to do, whether it be a math story problem, writing a paragraph, making a diagram, please provide models for them, especially at the beginning, because as I said, our schooling might be very different from others. You know, we tend to be more interactive and less lecture-y. So please provide models. Sketches. I am not an artist, but every day my students will ask me what a word is. So I just turn around and I draw even a stick figure on my board. That can help immensely with comprehension. Use color, whether it be highlighted or words. Gestures. I use gestures a lot. They know if I give a certain signal, they know what it means. And this is something called TPR, which is total physical response. It's a short video. If we have time at the end, we can come back to some of these links, but this is something that's going to be included as well in the doc at the end. But if the students can move or add a motion or a movement to that vocabulary topic, that's going to help them remember it. Okay, here's an example of a foldable. And then when you open it up, you've got the definition, but hopefully also a visual. And here's an example of an anchor chart. Okay. And one thing I would also want to stress with visual and verbal. I used to have a middle school teacher who would, after the bell rang, they're lining up, they're headed out the door, and he would shout, don't forget to read page 47 in your social studies book tonight. Okay, don't do that. You can't give verbal directions. You have to make sure you're looking at the student. It's written on the board with the objectives and everything. So just be aware that the students need models and visuals. Okay. All right. Simple visuals, just really simplified example. But if I don't know what these words are, I can connect it because I know that man is running. I like to run. I like to swim in a pool. So they're connecting these pictures. I might not know what the word traffic means, but it looks like there's a lot of cars there. So it helps students begin to question and to make those connections. Okay. So I'm going to assume you do not speak Dutch. So here is a sentence in Dutch, and I wouldn't expect you to be able to read it. However, if we add a visual, now you might at least know what topic I'm talking about. Okay. So I can assume it's maybe going to be about weather. And I can try to guess what that word Zonig might be sunny. So if you add visuals, it just makes life a lot easier for these English learners. Okay. And it's one of the easiest things you can do. Okay. So here is a really good, and it's a pretty simple strategy for reading. And this example comes from Courtney Morgan of the All Access Classroom, and it's the third grade reading. It's meant for third graders, but you can take this all the way up into high school. Okay, so when you amplify and you engineer the text, you're just going to make it more accessible. You're not simplifying it so much to dumb it down. Okay, you still need to teach them the content. The first thing you do is chunk it into text. And if you look at this first box, it already is less stressful to me because it's got big spaces between and there are less words. Okay, you want to add visuals. They've got visuals of the light bulb and the cotton, and they've got some emojis. Okay. And then after you chunk those sections, reword it or summarize it, keeping only the essential vocabulary. All right. So they're still getting the content that you want them to have, but you're making it you're amplifying, you're engineering it towards their needs. Vocabulary sports supports can be done in many different ways. They use red to, okay, I highlighted the vocabulary I want you to know. Then in the parentheses, she explained what it was, but also gave the L1 or the language, Spanish. So she's adding what they are. And so you can use color, bold, highlight, or the first language. Another thing you notice, the very last sentence, she simplified the verb tense because in the first one, Edison had done it. We don't typically teach those verb tenses right away. So you can simplify the words and reword it. I do not have this in the thing. So my little camera icon, just a reminder to snap a picture of this if you want. You can always just also search for examples of amplifying, but it's a good strategy to have in your pocket. Okay. This one's going to be helpful for writing and just learning content. Okay, it's picture word inductive model. All right, it gives the students the words and the language structures that you want them to know. And the complexity can differ based on your age and the students' levels, okay? So the first thing you're going to do is find a picture that's related to your topic. Then as a class or small groups, you're going to brainstorm all the words and you're going to label it. This one is a classroom and they've only labeled nouns, but you can label actions, you can label the verbs, and you can if you're working on descriptive language, you can use adjectives. So label your picture as a group. Okay. So right now, they now are getting names for those pictures. Okay. They're connecting the picture, but they're also getting spelling words for when they have to, well, they're getting words spelled for them. Then you want to write sentences together using sentence frames and using this. So you can set up sentence frames and the students can write a paragraph about this picture. All right. There are a lot of different things you can do, different types of writing. Again, you might want to snap a picture of this. There are a lot of really good examples. Valentina Gonzalez, I'm sorry. I have her in my doc at the end, and she has blogs full of picture word inductive model. Okay. continuing on from that, just examples of sentence frames and paragraph frames. Again, you want to think about the language that you want the students to produce, okay, in both writing and speaking, okay? And then you're going to just offer parts of that sentence and you're going to model the spoken or written language. I use this every single day with my students, and I have kindergarten, first and second graders. So even for my kindergartners who aren't reading, I will still write those frames on the board. And even if it's just a spoken frame, I model it, I point to those words, and when they repeat it and when they use it for their communication, they are looking at the board and they are counting, they're nodding their head at each word. So it is a very effective strategy for no matter what language. You can start super simple. When I teach kindergarten, we want to teach them what the school supplies are. So, and I don't like to teach things out of context. So I'm not just going to flash cards at them, scissors, pencil, glue. This is a pencil. I use it to write. So we learn the words, but we learn it within a sentence structure. Okay, so they're learning a lot more vocabulary. And the second example is a sample opinion writing. But again, you have to do one together and model it first before you expect them to do it. And I would do it several times. And then the bottom one is an example of how they can write a paragraph about comparing and contrasting. And again, you can use this both for writing and for speaking. Okay. Okay, so this is Google Image Translate, and I'm going to be honest with you, I just found out about this last month. This is, to me, it's a game changer for maybe content area teachers who like to share diagrams that you could find, you can make yourself, but if you find them from the internet, because in the past, the teachers would ask for help and I would translate each word on my own and we'd put a shape and a little text and then we would add it ourselves. But you can go to Google image, to google.com and click on images. The directions are in the end thing that you're going to get. And it will translate the entire diagram. To me, game changer to make this content accessible to your students. Okay. And okay, so this is a Google Chrome extension. It's called Immersive Reader. And there's a couple of things going on here. Please do take a picture. This link down here, Immersive Reader, it's just a 3-minute video that I made for my teachers in my district to follow the directions step by step. It's a little shaky because I'm trying to do it as I'm holding my phone. But this is a really good tool to preview lessons and give your background information and pre-teach vocabulary. What I like about it, because it not only can translate, but after you publish it to the web, you have a URL, you can put it in your Google Classroom, you can email it to the students, but if they click on it, they have to have Immersive Reader on their downloaded or whatever on their computers, but it will read aloud that content in their language. This is excellent for students who do not know how to read in their first language, or for young ones like mine, because we can't just translate documents all the time if they can't read it. So this is a fantastic resource, and it's a Chrome extension. And here's all the steps you need to know. But again, you can have that video. So please do snap a picture of that. And then I'm just going to talk about some other translation tools. So when you are in Google Doc, and again, I'm going to have the directions, but it needs to be a Google Doc. You just go to Tools, Translate Document, and you can translate it in any language. Okay. If something is saved in like I think is it a doc.x or docs doc, I think there's an S in there. You cannot translate that. So you need to go to File, Save as a Google Doc, then you can go to Tool and translate. Microsoft Word can translate. You just go to Review. It's kind of in the middle over there. Go to Review and hit Translate, and you can translate in any language, okay? For spoken translation, of course, we have Google Translate on our phones and in our iPads. The students will have older students will have Google Translate just open on their computers, and they like to listen. They can type the microphone and it will translate as their teacher is lecturing to them. So that's another type of translation. There's the Say Hi app. I like that a lot better with my Haitian Creole students. It still doesn't speak their language out loud, but I'm able to read it better. And then for messaging, there's an app called Talking Points, which you can send text to parents and it can be received in any language. Okay. There are a lot of tools in the document that I have. I raced through that very quickly, but we can go back to any slide. I'd like to know what kind of questions you might have. I'm gonna open that up.
Thank you so much, Crystal. We have some activity in the chat, but I want to be quiet for a minute and let people chime in and ask questions live. Right now, we have 9 more minutes, and then I can
Perfect.
share something in the chat if needed.
Okay.
Nobody has a question for Crystal? I'll share. When you ask people where they are, Crystal, we have Michelle, who is a teacher, and she was an administrator in California, so has lots of experience with the importance of working with EL students. Casey is a teacher and has an administrator license. Always had
Yeah,
at
I'm
least,
reading this. Nice. I like the backgrounds.
yeah. So quite a few of our participants have EL students in their classrooms or have certainly appreciated the importance of this in their districts.
Okay. And
There
then
was a video or a link that you said if we had time, we could go back to, Crystal.
do you know which one? How do I do this? Can I oh, there's my thank you. Do I escape to go back or how do I go back?
I think the same way you went forward, just go back.
That's the end. That was just something. Oh, there we go. Okay. Do you guys remember which video it might have been?
If you go, keep going. I think it was hyperlinked.
There's total physical response.
There we go.
Like,
Was it the language objectives?
no, that's just a link. I think if you guys wanted to see the video of this is a video of
There
total
we go.
physical response.
Okay.
Do you want me?
Maybe. Yeah, sure.
I don't want to get this.
Underrated hardest
Gotta get
subject
the ad
to
here.
learn is doing a ton of writing. I'm constantly writing.
Total physical response is a really great way to teach vocabulary to students. It forces them to think very abstractly about language, and so they have to use their bodies to move and define language, and it forces them to solidify it. Nah, let's read the definition. It's always important to start with a simple student-friendly definition. After you have that, they need to come up with a physical movement that they create themselves. How can we make our bodies show this definition? To make something pretty, how can we use our body? Oh, look at what Jesus just tried. Show us. If it's something student-made, they have ownership over it. And so they are more likely to remember it that way. You make it a game, you have them respond to your prompt by pointing to them and saying, okay, give me the word decorate. And they have to orally say the definition and also elephant act out, or the physical response has to be done at the same time. it's great because with enough consistency, you can have some of these groups learning 60, 70 words in a year. It's a really powerful thing for English language learners, especially who have a hard time grasping new vocabulary. By the end of the year, they were quizzing each other and they have so much ownership over it. Again, going back to that definition that they create, it's all on them, and it's powerful stuff.
Thank you, Crystal.
Now, not all of them are, I don't know how to get back to that. Not all of them are teacher or student created. And but I like that one. So there's a lot of different examples, and you can use it for older students as well. And we've used it for adults at the university too.
Good,
All right.
good.
Any other questions? Or I saw that one of the I can't find the chat now. One of the people in the chat says she's interested in knowing about the OEL cadre. I can give you information on that. Did I have
Yep,
my
that was Stephanie said, I'm
contact?
interested in learning more about the OEA EL
Yes,
cadre. Do you have a slide, Crystal, with your contact on it?
I do. If I can, I think it was at the, yeah. You can just email me at this is my school email. Okay, and any questions that come up, I've had a former colleague from a district, they just got their first new ELs and they don't have programming. And she said that the administrator was actually unaware of what the laws were and that they had to screen them. So we try to do a lot. I try to give as much information as I can and help other people, teachers in other districts too.
Good. So everyone, hopefully you can see Crystal's email clearly on the slide. It's C Whipkey, so WHIPKEY at fcs.org. If you have any questions. Okay, if nobody has any questions, we can have 3 found minutes. And for those of you, for our participants, we'll go back to the main room where we were before. And so we'll all meet back over there in the main room.
Dr. Lavinia,
Yep.
do you have that link that I sent you? Or
I think you shared it with Beth, and I think she has you're talking about for your document.
yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Beth is going to make sure that everybody gets a copy of that.
Okay, because I can put it in the chat
Yeah,
too,
that'd be
but
great.
somebody has it.
Yeah, that
If
would
I
be great.
can, me and where's my chat? Oh, here we go. I'm not so great at virtual, you guys. Okay, so I hope this is helpful. Lots of really good information in that. Okay.
Thank you, Crystal. And then Beth will be, she'll be able to share that also via email.
All right. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.